Well, welcome back. And as a follow-up to something we just talked about, what a delight to have with us today, Scottie Nell Hughes, news director for the Tea Party News Network. And we have a lot to talk to Scottie about. Hi, Scottie. How are you? Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thanks for having me. And guess what? I've changed. You know, I'm kind of now a part of a bigger family of USA Radio Networks. So it's amazing. That was Santa's gift to me this week, I think. Well, the three wise men finally wised up and put me back on the radio.
Hey, congratulations, because we're an affiliate of USA News. That's wonderful. Well, listen, we just talked about a few moments ago Franklin Graham stepping up and saying, look, I've had enough of the GOP. They won't even stand for their own platform planks. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think that's why you saw Franklin Graham acting this way. Last week, immediately when the vote happened, Todd Starnes said, I am no longer a Republican. That is the sentiment that the majority of, I think, Republicans and conservatives, those 40% that's making up Donald Trump, the 20% that's making up Ted Cruz, and all of the other conservatives that are showing up to be the majority of the Republican Party, we are all frustrated at the votes that happened last week, and we would have preferred that these guys would have stayed off the bus.
Well, I've never seen anything like it for us to turn around in light of all of these videos with Planned Parenthood and to allow the spending bill to fully fund Planned Parenthood is just inexcusable.
Absolutely. I mean, when we have video proof. Now, granted, I do believe that there was some issues with it, and I think the truth didn't necessarily always come out about where the videos were. But the facts were there were babies that were being murdered and were being sold. And if there's any reason to shut down our government and hold our ground, it's because of that issue right there. And yet, we did have some traction, and then we started to take some steps back. And when it came down to these votes, Paul Ryan gave in on 150 different conservative principles. And the only thing we can tout is oil. And before the bill was even signed, you already had the White House and Josh Earnest doing a victory lap, literally rubbing conservatives and Republicans' nose in it. This is just the beginning. Hold on to your knickers, because I promise you the next year is going to be a wild ride as President Obama tries to get the rest of his progressive ideas through, like he promised in 2008.
How can the Republicans survive this, and especially the Freedom Caucus?
Well, the Republicans should not survive this, to be honest with you. The Republicans, this is what the Republican Party right now, we've been screaming for the last 8 years as conservatives that we've been bullied, that we've been forgotten about. We've been called names like wacko birds on the floor of the Senate by Senator John McCain and other leadership. The Republican Party has already left us. What we've said for the last 8 years, I've heard over and over from conservatives, was the fact that we needed to go form a new party. Well, that wasn't going to work. So this election cycle, our plan has been to take back our party. But to do that, we have to blow up what's already there. And unfortunately, this last pin right here is going to do so much damage to our country. But at the same time, it might be another, once again, another wake-up call that Washington, D.C. status quo has got to be wrecked.
So how can the RNC defend a Republican for re-election who voted for this bill?
Well, that's the thing. The RNC, you have to realize the actual RNC, unfortunately, the chairman, Reince Priebus, very, very nice guy. They have little to no power. Believe it or not. The power has just been chipped away by the National Congressional Congress, the National Senatorial Republican Caucus. Those two caucuses are actually the power holders right now within Washington, D.C. Reince Priebus, I think, has very conservative principles, but his whole goal is fundraising, 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 fundraising. He gets master. He's kind of, I don't want to say a puppet, because no one's really a puppet per se, but I think he has a whole governing board of the most conservative executive committee men and women you've ever met. The most conservative that the states have ever sent in the history of the Republican Party. And yet they can't do anything because they can put out as many edicts as they want. They actually issued an edict saying that they were against Common Core and it should be repealed. Did you ever hear of that necessarily from the Republican senators and congressmen? Absolutely not. So the actual RNC has very little power, unfortunately, in the legislation that's being passed. The truth is it comes down to that House and Senate leadership. I would be more interested right now in seeing if we could remove John Boehner, even though we just, not John Boehner, remove Paul Ryan, even though we just removed John Boehner. We've got to remove our leadership, and I think that's what's going to happen with this presidential election, is people are going to go to the polls, especially in the House, with the majority of them being up in the House for re-election. Trickle-down economics also work in trickle-down politics. And if we get the right candidates out there, this is the year. If you are a conservative and you really believe that you've got a good foundation, you have no skeletons in your closet, you want to run for Congress, this is going to be the year for you to do it.
On the other hand, the RNC raises the hard money under the McCain-Feingold bill, and that is the money that has to get to a candidate. So they do have some power.
But they don't necessarily, but the way the power is distributed, it's unnecessary. It's not necessarily Ryan's or any of these executive committee women, men or women saying, this is who the candidates go to, this is who it doesn't. That's not where the power is going to. Unfortunately, the money goes to whoever Mitch McConnell, now Paul Ryan, whoever these senators and congressmen want it to be. You're seeing, I'm in the state of Tennessee, Nashville. Just south of me, you have Dr. Desjardins, Scott Desjardins. He is probably the most conservative in the voting record of all of the Tennessee delegation, but by chance of all the Republicans in the House. And yet he is being targeted by the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Caucus, say that 3 times fast. He is being targeted. And they're trying to put an establishment guy in because he was so conservative and voted against John Boehner time and time again and was not afraid to go in there and talk against him. That's who the power is. So the money that you're donating to the RNC, that money is also being funneled through in various ways. D.C. is not as easy and as honest as you and I might be within our own households, believe it or not.
So who heads up the congressional committee for the Republican Congressional Committee who would actually challenge, or who would funnel that money?
Well, that's the thing. You've got Ward Baker heads up one of the wings and the other wings, but it comes down to the actual elected officials. This is why positions like Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan are not just about holding a gavel on the floor. These are the guys that steer. This is why you see deals being made about who's going to be committee chairs. These are how things are traded. I mean, it's like the game of Monopoly on Capitol Hill. So, you know, that's why, and these are the things that we don't see. Did you ever see House of Cards? Did you ever watch the movie?
Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, that's more truthful than it is fiction, I believe, because that's the kind of things that do happen in D.C. Everything is a strategy. Everything's a chess game. And that's kind of like what we're seeing right now with the presidential campaign, except it's being a little bit more exposed because you have a person who's the front runner who wants to expose it. But you're seeing these chess matches. You know, right now we're seeing this great boosting of a Ted Cruz, who I adore. I think Ted Cruz is the most conservative, principally aligned with me as can be. And the truth is, I believe one day we will have a President Cruz. My biggest fear right now, however, after you've seen these attacks, whether you like Mr. Trump or not, you've seen these attacks on him, nothing has worked. Somebody somewhere has wised up and said, you know what? I think we need to use one of our own. And so my fear, I hope that Senator Cruz is really that these numbers are legit, that his rise is these numbers that are being boosted. You know, we saw the Quinnipiac poll came out, had him 4 points within Donald Trump, and yet you had Reuters and CNN come out in the last 12 hours and say that Trump was double Cruz's numbers. So you know there's something going on here. There's some manipulation going on. And the key is I don't want conservatives. I don't want Christians. I don't want evangelicals used. And we are used by the left, but we're more importantly used by the wolves within our own party, used against ourselves to eat our own. And then they can easily take them out. And then we're going to end up with another establishment candidate like we've done the last 2 election cycles.
All right, Scottie, before I take a break here in about 2 minutes, it appeared to me that when Boehner left, and Ryan was being considered, that some kind of a deal was cut with the Freedom Caucus to go ahead and vote for Ryan, and then Ryan immediately turns around and throws him under the bus. Is the Freedom Caucus done?
Well, it's not done necessarily, but they definitely have to work. We knew this was going to happen. You're right. There was a deal worked out with the Freedom Caucus. The problem is there were so many people that worked hard to get Boehner out. I mean, went to Ohio. This has been a 2-year process. I watched people, blood, sweat, and tears go into it. But when we got Boehner out, the problem was we had no plan what to do to fill it in. We were not organized. I knew from the very beginning, once we got Boehner out, that unless the Freedom Caucus acted immediately and swiftly, you would have Paul Ryan in there. It was an obvious choice. So right now, the Freedom Caucus has got to regather. They've got to stop being kind of like the little poodles that I keep hearing about, just nipping it. And they've got to start becoming the bulldog in the room. And they got to start showing some teeth. And they got to say, you know what? We are going to publicly expose the backroom deals that are happening. Listen, what doesn't help is when they passed the omnibus, and even though the Freedom Caucus said no to it, they came out, they never bashed Paul Ryan for it. They said, well, he promised us that he would get back on track next year. Yeah, promises in D.C. are kind of like the cookies right now in my kitchen. They're gone as soon as you bake them.
Well said. Let me take a quick break. We'll be right back with Scottie Nell Hughes. She's the news director for the Tea Party and now part of the USA Radio Network news team. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, we're back, and our special guest today is Scottie Nell Hughes. She is news director for the Tea Party News Network, and recently now been picked up by USA Radio Network News. And are we going to start hearing you on some of the hourly newscasts?
You never know where I might appear. I'm starting every morning with Angie and doing Daybreak, but there's a really awesome show coming in February or January, February that's going to be just phenomenal. So hopefully you'll be hearing me. A couple little tidbits from that. It's all about trends, which you trend every day. So, I mean, I'll be discussing you on a daily basis.
Good. Well, nice to welcome. That's great. All right. So, will the Tea Party endorse anybody yet?
Well, first of all, the Tea Party, you got to understand who the Tea Party is. The Tea Party is not a party. They wish we were a party. They wish that we were as organized as a Republican and a Democrat, because then they could easily destroy us. You know, I understand why the idea of the Tea Party, the name came, but it really is more of a tea movement. It is a movement. It's a movement to push the America, but mainly at this point, the Republican Party, back to its conservative roots. It talks about fiscal responsibility. It talks about states' rights, national liberty, as well as securing our borders. It doesn't talk about social issues, is why the Tea Party was originally refounded 8 years ago. So the Tea Party endorsing candidates, the Tea Party is not an organized body. There's not a president. There's not a CFO. There's no one telling us who, what, where, when. It's up to the local bodies. It's just a way, it's just a movement of trying to organize the message to get out better. So when there comes times that we do need to show up on Washington, D.C. and march and wave our yellow flags and try to get their attention, that we have the means and capabilities of doing so.
The media has picked up the term Tea Party and has used it to turn around and mischaracterize a lot of people. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people really radically on the right. I get that. But there's a lot of people like yourself within that movement trying to change the culture within the Republican Party to get back to its conservative roots. But the media has done a pretty good job of beating us up a little bit.
Oh, no kidding. We are the most demonized word. I mean, take racist, homophobic, anti-granny, anti-cookie, pro-carb, kick your mother out in the street in the rain, put it all together, and they funnel that under Tea Party in Webster's dictionary. It's really sad to see what they've done to these folks, because all the people, every day when I come across people that are members of the Tea Party, I see people that are passionate about their country. I see people that want to provide a better life for their family than what maybe they were born into. I see people that really do believe what the American dream is and want to have faith and see their faith practiced openly without ridicule. You know, those same foundations that we were founded upon in America. It's funny today, we're not able to celebrate those. And people go, well, wait a minute, this is a new century. This is different. We're not back, you know, when we were originally founded. It's different now. Well, go look at Somalia today, where I don't know if you saw the news. Public officials have come down to Somalia and said there will be no public celebrations of Christmas. And if you do, you will be arrested and prosecuted. They've commanded all hotels, all restaurants, don't you dare agree to hold a Christmas party in your place. Now, granted, that is Somalia, but that shows that there is still a hatred for Christianity, and at least they're more apparent about it. What we're seeing is this slow infiltration here in the United States of America. But if people don't wake up, if people don't get involved, and don't just necessarily, well, I'm only going to stick to this one issue, I guarantee Somalia is not going to be so far away down the road.
Okay. Trump's rise in popularity is certainly an expression of the contempt and the anger and the frustration that voters have with Congress, the administration, and even the Republican Party. And I get that, but he doesn't seem to be representing the Christian character that we'd like to see in this debate. What is one to do?
It's a very tough one, trust me. And as a Christian myself, it's a woman of faith. It's very hard for me because he chooses language sometimes that I definitely would not choose. But the question is, you have to wonder right now, you know, I don't necessarily do that 80-20 rule that, you know, Ronald Reagan says, if you go along with 80 with them, you might as well go on and go with them. But in this faith, I look at two things. I look at that we are in such a disastrous situation after 8 years of Barack Obama. I don't think people realize, not only from a government perspective, but from a security perspective, how much trouble that we are in. And if we don't go in there and completely eradicate, annihilate, take out all of the rats, all of the bugs of a bureaucracy that President Obama has put in over the last 8 years, we will have no hope, and there's definitely going to be no change. So, I understand Iowa going for Ted Cruz. Like I said, fundamentally Christian. He is right. I am marched right along with what he says. The problem is right now is that, yes, we're not going to be able to have any freedoms if we don't have somebody that's going to go in there and completely eradicate everything that President Obama has set up for us.
Do you think Trump can do it?
Honestly, when you go to those rallies, I think he can. Right now, when it comes down to it, we can talk about faith all you want, and as an evangelical, we can talk about faith and our definitely our Christian values. But when it comes down to it, if we don't have the money in our pockets, if we don't have the ability to be safe and have our own weapons, it doesn't matter about what our faith is and trying to promote Christianity. We're going to be too busy trying to hold on to our own. And so the key is right now is I think he can go up against Hillary. And when you go to these rallies and you see the 10 to 20,000 people there, they're not just Republicans. These are people that have never been engaged before. They've never paid attention before. And I'm not saying Mr. Trump has caused them to it. I'm actually saying maybe they were cut from their insurance. Maybe they lost their job because their job went somewhere else to a foreign country. They've been forced to wake up, and they're looking for somebody that will go in there and actually give them hope that they're going to eradicate this system. And so, listen, God is a just God. Nobody ever said he was just a nice and friendly God. God is a God of judgment. And right now our country is coming under judgment. And we need somebody that's going to be in there and be just as tough and say, guys, it's a hard thing to do, but we have got to do it. We've got to eradicate. So, I think Trump can go all that way. I think the problem is going to be is if we do put somebody that is so close, like a Chris Christie or a Jeb Bush to Hillary, then people are going to stick with the Democratic Party. But if you give somebody an idea that that the things are going to be completely annihilated, things are going to be changed, that's a little bit more of a hope than necessarily saying we're going to keep on the same path.
Okay.
I know, but there's so much there for you to digest on this one. Here's the key when it comes down to me as an evangelical, why I can support Trump. He is pro-life. That is my number one thing as an evangelical. That's my number one concept anyways. I came off the set of the Gosnell trial and the movie that they're doing on it. And you want to talk about your heart being ripped out as you hear the stories of these nurses as they looked at the babies on the pans that were still alive and breathing. And it just led into my conviction that as long as I can have a president up there who, number one, values life, and number two, values American life, then we can sort out all the other details in the end. Right now, unfortunately, I don't believe we have a president that does that. I know he doesn't value life. I'm pretty sure he doesn't value my conservative American family life. And so I need somebody that's going to in there, and those two priorities, everything, all the other details, we can work out. But that's my number one priority, and that's something that Mr. Trump is.
I applaud you for making life the number one issue, and that's why I think I applaud Franklin Graham for what he has done. I don't know if he's in an open primary state or not, but something has to be said to these Republicans that voted for this bill that funds Planned Parenthood again. And the only thing I could think of is we ought to find some good people to run against them.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. The problem, and this is the year to do it. Like I said, Ted Cruz at the top of the ticket, I'm jumping for joy. Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, jumping for joy. Even to a certain extent, Marco Rubio, who had the most conservative record up until this Gang of Eight immigration bill, who does, I believe, have a good heart about him. The key is all this has shown is that the majority of the Republican Party are conservatives. These are diehard fiscal conservatives. While we've been told the last two election cycles that we have to have, this come to the middle, play to the different demographics, and we lose. Now what we're seeing, these large numbers, consistent numbers from the very beginning, those guys are the ones that have woken up. Those are the people. And so I have hope in that area. But I think down the line that we do, this is the year to run if you are a conservative. But like I said, you better be a good one, because they're going to do they're going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at you to try to demonize you. But if you are a good person, and I know a lot of people out there are, this is the year to run, because you're going to have the momentum and the push of a presidential to lead you on through.
Over to Hillary just for a couple of moments. I can't help but think that more and more is coming out, certainly on the email scandal and Benghazi scandal. And given the tenacity of a Congressman Trey Gowdy, I can't help but think we'll see something major come of this probably around August.
You would think, you would like. I'm glad you're optimistic. I'm not, because unfortunately, it doesn't matter to her base. Truth and lies don't matter to her. The truth about what happened that night in Benghazi does not matter to the people that are voting for her, because ultimately what we've seen the Democratic Party turn into a party that pays for votes through the government. They pay with taxpayer dollars through welfare. They literally campaign on the idea that everybody's a victim and you deserve reparations. That right there is where Hillary Clinton's going to win. So it doesn't matter what she does, as long as she can continue that government assistance. That, unfortunately, is where we're seeing the Democratic Party go. Now, to the rest of us, our only hope would be that we could continue that trial and error. But it doesn't matter what she says. You know, we saw in this latest thing that came out with her, she's sitting here screaming once again about sexism and female and gender. Well, the truth is she's being called out because of the lies that she told about whether or not what videos are being shown to help recruit from ISIS. So, you know, we see this as a woman of excuses. This is a woman who continues to tell lies, but does it really matter with her base, especially when there's no other choices? I mean, Bernie Sanders, who today came out basically endorsing Hillary Clinton, that's not a race. That's not somebody to contend against.
I understand that. I guess my thought was that it appears to me that there's still a potential indictment pending out there somewhere. We know that the FBI does not like the DOJ, and it operates independently of that. And you got Trey Gowdy overseeing the committee that could bring about some very damaging evidence, but I can't help but think they're going to delay some of that till later on in the campaign. If you come out too early, she can get it behind her.
You would think, but here's the problem with Trey Gowdy. First of all, the committee is great, but it's already been damaged. You know, their reputation. We saw that just happen with the idea when it came out a couple weeks ago about how it was meant to hurt her campaign. But here's the thing: why you and I could do better on that committee than anybody up there. There's simple questions we have to ask. Where was the president? Where was the Secretary of State? Why did we not issue the order? And not issuing the order was same as issuing a stand-down order. Simple questions not coming out. And what I'm really fearful, and I think the real reason is because you have to remember, there's blood on Republican hands, too. There is leadership. The events of that night could not have happened without Republican leadership knowing about it, and that would come out to show their inaction as well. That's why we're never going to probably find out the truth about Benghazi.
Got to go, Scottie. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Merry
and again, congratulations to your new appointment. Look forward to hearing you on the air a lot more often. By the way, you can go to ScottieNellHughes.com is our website. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.